preservation of and increased access to the 92nd Street Y Humanities Audio Archives is generously funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to our series, Sundays with Wendy. My name is Susan Engel, and I direct the Adult Division in the Center for Adult Life and Learning. I'm so glad to see so many of you with us in this warm hall on this cold winter night. March 5th is the last night in this series, and it features Nicholas Heitner, who is the Tony Award-winning director of Carousel and the recent director of the movie The Madness of King George. Andre Bishop, the artistic director of Lincoln Center Theater, and the acclaimed playwright John Guare will also be joining this panel, along with Forrest Sawyer and Wendy Wasserstein, to discuss their creative work in the theater. And we still have a few tickets available for some other programs this season. John Cleese on March 1st, Norman Mailer on March 19th, Jackie Mason on March 26th, and Mike Wallace on April 2nd. And I encourage you to buy your tickets in advance to ensure your admission. And now for tonight. After the program, we'll be collecting some cards from the audience, but we'll basically be taking questions from the floor. Once again, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, who will then introduce our guest. She is one of America's best-loved playwrights, who, with her keen intellect, vibrancy, wonderful sense of humor, and profound humanity that comes across in all her work, has become a sought-after star in her own right. She is the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright of such hits as Uncommon Women and Others, The Heidi Chronicles, Isn't It Romantic, and most recently on Broadway, The Sisters Rosensweig. The Sisters Rosensweig is currently touring the country and is playing in London as well. We are thankful for her continued support of the Y and for opportunities such as this one, which allow for the relationship between her and her adoring public to flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Wendy Wasserstein.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I have the pleasure of introducing tonight one of my favorite men, not only in the theater, but just one of my favorite men in anything. And in fact, when Robert Klein was in my play, women would stop me on the street and say, "Tell me about him. Do you have an address? Is he available?" So, and they were right to stop me. When Robert was in my play, I would watch the scene that he had with Madeline Kahn. I would always stand in the back of the theater and watch them, because to me it was as if the two of them were skating. It was as if it was jazz. Robert is a great craftsman, I think a great actor, as only someone who understands comedy ultimately can be. Robert is local talent. He was born in the Bronx. He's a graduate of DeWitt Clinton High School and Alfred University, which he graduated in 1962 with a BA in poli-sci and history. He also went to the Yale School of Drama, and this shows how intelligent Robert is. He left after a year. He has performed comedy, drama, music video, stand-up comedy, concerts, movies, and television. In 1979, he starred and received the LA Drama Critics Award for his performance in the hit musical They're Playing Our Song. And in 1993, he made his return to the stage in The Sisters Rosensweig, for which he won an Obie Award and the Outer Critics Award for Outstanding Performance by an Actor. He has been a regular guest on The Tonight Show for over 20 years. He's hosted Saturday Night Live twice. His movie roles include Hooper with Burt Reynolds, The Owl and the Pussycat with Barbra Streisand, and The Bell Jar. He can also be seen on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. on NBC Sisters as Big Al Parker, Swoosie Kurtz's now husband. He has done 5 one-man shows for HBO and is working on his 6th special. He's a man of brilliance and unique style, and he's also the man who said when Jane Alexander left the Sisters Rosensweig to be head of the NEA, Robert said, "You see, I kiss a woman and she goes into government." It's my pleasure to introduce Robert Klein.
I feel like I left my cello. I've seen some great chamber music in this room, and I'm sorry the oboe is left at home. Going to do some partitas.
So, Robert, let's talk a little bit about New York and the Bronx and being from the Bronx and how that's contributed to your humor and life.
Well, I had a love affair with this city, as did my mother, Frida. It has tremendous energy and a great heart, with all the curtness and impoliteness, with all of these faults. When there were blackouts, people were kind to one another. There's all kinds of ways this city shows its heart, and of course it's the biggest of everything. Everything is at your fingertips. My mother used to come home and say, "I saw Lloyd Nolan today at Macy's." You can't say that if you live in Canton, Kansas. You understand? Canton, Kansas is a fine place. In fact, I think I just invented it.
Yes. Robert, were you someone who always thought of yourself as funny?
Yes. Definitely. I am in a family which 3 generations parents have had to go to the principal's office because of fooling around. Sarah and Jacob Klein went to PS something or other in Yorkville in 1923. Benny was incorrigible. A few people in this room knew my father, hilarious man, right? My parents had to go to Miss Roden at PS 94, and I had to go to my son's principal at the Hackley School in Tarrytown. You got to know how to pick your spots.
Yeah.
A laugh is a good thing, but you can't disrupt and all. But it is a talent. It's well nurtured in my son. My father was hysterical. My sister is hilarious. She's here. The whole family was touched by humor.
Certainly. Did your family encourage you?
Yes, because everything was funny. Just like Oliver Hardy's used to imitate the characters at his mother's hotel. There was behind the back satire about characters, about people. My parents were born in New York, but Hungarian lineage. Jaj, Istenem, nothing was understated. Nothing. A glass of water spilled. Jaj, Istenem, water on my rug. Nothing was calm, The furniture and rugs were unused. There was a plastic thing on the rug. And I went to a friend's house and on DeKalb Avenue, and he had a regular rug, and I thought they were poor people, and it wore through to the fuzz,
But Robert, were you supposed to be funny in life but not be funny to make a living? Didn't they want you to be a doctor or something?
To make a living was the farthest reaches of no one's imagination. And my parents were show business types. My mother had a good job during the Depression. My sister was born in 1937. Do you mind if I told them, Rhoda? She has a mole here. Anyway. They had a wonderful 30s. They went to shows. My father had to take out-of-town buyers. He was in the garment center. They were kids. They made not much, but they had a great time. But to have considered it himself, Myron Cohen from his crowd in the textile center did make a big career as a comedian. I think my father was as talented as Myron Cohen, but it just never came up. So when it came up to me, it actually came in the form of 2 college professors at Alfred University, Smith and Brown. Ivy Leaguers with pipes, and they were wonderful theater men at this school. They were the whole theater department at Alfred. And they told my father, end of junior year, he's talented, Mr. Klein. He should go to Yale. We can get him in there and blah, blah, blah. And Yale? To go to college? To go to be an actor? My father said, Yale? Did Eddie Cantor go to Yale? there's a lot more merit to that statement than you think.
Has your training actually as a classical actor helped you in your craft, in your comedy?
Yes, I think from the start, when all my compatriots were going to medical school, a few have become attorneys, Jacoby and Myers. I used them recently for a corporate merger, you know. O.J. Simpson's using the Jacoby and Myers murder department at Sears in Elizabeth, New Jersey. See what a good lawyer can do? Actually make you think he may not be guilty. Anyway, that's the wrong subject. Where were we? Classical training, yes.
Classical drama.
Yes, because just to finish that other thought, Yale was not all that valuable to me in real terms. Miss Welch, Connie Welch, the great drama coach, had kind of, those days were over. She was not at her peak. Actors were not getting as good shrift as maybe playwrights, you say no, but certainly the designers and all that. Ted Mann and others said, come to New York, do it, you know. And to leave school was a frightening thing. But Yale directed me. Everyone else went to med school. I knew it was perfect for me to do that. And yes, making the ability to be understood a paramount training facet was something you might not get elsewhere. Or as yes, they were basic things, but the best training I ever had was Second City in Chicago, because I got with them, they auditioned and I got a part, and I joined them in '65, and I got $150 a week, and instead of paying $12,000 a year to Yale, and I learned more. That was a great learning experience. Everything an actor has ever heard, seen, smelled should be somehow contribute to the final structure, the working machine, you know.
When did you make the shift from, in a way, because you're one of the few people who has managed to be both a wonderful, I think, stage actor and a stand-up comedian. When did you suddenly see that you'd be able to do both?
Well, my professors at Alfred never visualized a stand-up thing. Miss Welch, when I did some funny exercise at Yale, said, "Oh, Klein, you ought to do a one-man show." Yes, well, I was very much taken with every comedian I'd ever seen, either in person when I worked as a lifeguard and a busboy in the Borscht Belt, and I saw guys like Bernie Burns and Larry Deutsch, and a certain kind of bullet delivery like Jackie Mason. I loved Sid Caesar on television and Lucille Ball and Red Buttons. Everything was wonderful about comedy and making people laugh. Then when I got older, I never did see Lenny Bruce in person, but I heard his records and saw some films. And what thrilled me was, there he was in Carnegie Hall with lighting and a black and white kind of aspect, and he was saying things that mattered and getting hilarious big laughs. And so stand-up comedy, which always had the imprimatur of the cheap, the easy, the smoke-filled room there. But I'll tell you, my girlfriend's so fat. Someone could say something. Lord Buckley goes back. Anyone remember Lord Buckley? The Naz was Jesus Christ. It was sort of jazz raps way before rapping. Bruce and Jonathan Winters, totally aintellectual, apolitical, but a stand-up genius. And I always thought that the combination of Jonathan Winters and Lenny Bruce would have been the finest comedian in the world. Richard Pryor, in some of his finest routines, is about as good a person still living that I've ever seen do this. It has great potential, stand-up. It can have great dignity, and the idea of standing in front of people for an hour and a half and making them laugh by yourself is wonderful. But the audiences are simply not as informed and astute. I'm off on a slightly different subject for a moment, but as they were in the late 60s when I started. There's a few guys doing politics. Most of what passes for political humor are the jokes written for David and Jay Leno by these writers, which are, physical, or they're less than profound, shall we say. I think, I'll tell you, when gals go shopping, I did a show for the E! Channel, which I don't even get. But, well, I up in Briarcliff.
I've seen this show.
And I saw 65 young comedians, and too many of them went. But I'll tell you, when the gals go shopping, please, let's go a little further. Anyway, there's talent out there. It's a wonderful art. I'm still in it. There was not really a switch. What happened was that upon coming from Second City back to New York, I got a part in Apple Tree, Mike Nichols' first musical, and my first Broadway show and musical. And immediately took a 30-pound Wallensack tape recorder when I saw the show was going to be a hit. I bought a Volvo, 1967. And I walked down the Schubert to the Improv and did a turn and recorded it on this heavy tape recorder. My career in stand-up parallels the diminution in the size of recording devices. I'm prehistoric. I told Mr. Morita that, the head of Sony once, and he great interest. It was a way out of the chorus. You know what I mean, Wendy?
Yes.
It was something I knew I could do well, and I had success instantly, and Rodney Dangerfield saw me. I didn't even know who this guy was. He said, let me tell you something, all right? I'm a tough, I won't tell you what he said. You know? You're brilliant, all right? You know, and I, hello, security. I had no idea. And he said, you know, you got to stay here for 3 years and work on this, you know. He was right, really. Yeah, that became my home base. I got with a great manager. But that was the entree into getting my name thrust out in front, out of anonymity, out of the crowd, out of the starting gate. But I never thought of it as just a stepping stone. I think it's a fine art that hasn't even nearly been explored. And I just hope, I'm 53 now. I was 53 the other day. By the way, I got my ARP card there. I'm calling Dr. Dvorkian as soon as I get home. Although I keep it next to my toilet, there are excellent discounts, I notice. I put it next to the Land's End catalog. I notice I can get a discount on flowers and oxygen and the early bird special. I can get a lobster in Fort Lauderdale, the best in town, for $4. If I'm willing to eat it at 8:30 in the morning.
Robert.
I just hope I have the energy. Stand-up comedy is a young person's game.
Is it still, do you think that's true?
George Burns, everyone. How about George Burns? Come on. George is, you know, it's a crapshoot. The man who smokes cigars and drunk. He's one of 96 children, all of whom are dead. He's had a great life. You know, the spin of the bottle. But I mean, it's a, you know, it takes energy to stand in one and continue to do that. Especially if one is not just a monologist, like in the manner of Mort Saul, who would have the Times under his arm and sat in a stool. I mean, I bounce around. I used to, you know, lose 3-4 pounds on a summer night, you know, which I could now.
Yes, I was thinking I'll do it too. I think of you as being very musical.
You know I love you. She created me, you know. You know how I feel about, there is a slight religious awe about her. She is the mother of me, and yet she's younger than I am. There's something about, she created the sweetest guy, you know.
Dream Merv. But Robert, no, I do think of you as very musical. And do you think somehow that relates to the comedy in a way, to the rhythm of the comedy?
Yes, that's often pointed out, and I think it's very true. Sid Caesar is an excellent musician. There's a ton of people, all of whom, Johnny Carson, great timing in the drums. No question about it, that timing is has a parallel to music. But it's you can teach an awful lot, but a lot of it is rather there early. I can't say that it's genetic or inborn, but you learn it early, I think.
What about being Jewish in terms of your comedic sense? Do you think that that's been sort of, because I'm always asked that and I refuse to answer, so I'm making you do it. So.
I think it's a very valid question. I don't think there's a society on earth or a culture or a creed that doesn't have a sense of humor, that doesn't laugh. Somehow I have the feeling that that's a natural human function. But I would say that there are certain societies or people, Jews among them, Irish, tremendous parallels with the Irish culture. There is, first of all, not always and necessarily, but definitely, like the sand in the oyster, there is persecution. I think persecution makes for coping. And just as the heart might seek other outlets, maybe that's what happens with human beings who are persecuted, who are sort of close and share. They say that slaves, American slaves, had a real, anti-boss, a whole system of insults and humor. Also, it's just simply in the tradition of Jewish people to be funny. It is not an accident that so many people in comedy are Jewish. I haven't any more scientific explanation than that. I just don't know, but it's passed on. Certainly, one has other Jewish examples, right? It has a lot to do with why there are so many black basketball players. It's a cultural thing. To be a successful basketball player is to have a wonderful life, and it's a game that's very popular among black kids. It's also popular among white kids, but Korean groceries. A lot of Korean immigrants realize. They went to the A&P, these tomatoes are garbage. We can charge twice as much, but it won't taste like a potato. Greek coffee shops, there are these things. Jewish comedians, I don't know, I may be on the wrong track. Catholic priests, the Jews are underrepresented in the priesthood. It's just one of those things, really. Except the Archbishop in Lyon, who somehow went with the orphanage bit, forgot to stop hiding after the war, became Catholic, and went all the way up, though, didn't he?
Robert, what about comedy on television, and what does it do does it filter the comedy? Are you reducing it in some way? And also, you were talking to me earlier that you did the first cable television comedy.
Well, that was a big breakthrough, because up to then, you were severely hampered in language. I am not known as a blue comedian. I really have conventional senses like a lot of other people, don't like a lot of profanity. But let's also not pretend that profanity, well chosen, isn't part of the English language. A great author would use it when it becomes every other word. So that was impossible to do on The Tonight Show or The Merv Griffin Show or The Mike Douglas Show, Although Mike Douglas, Mr. Family Man, once turned to me and said, are you ready for this? I shouldn't be such a yenta. Anyway. Yoko Ono was on doing something. I respect her a lot, but singing isn't exactly her line. And Mike Douglas, Mr. Family Man, turned to me and said, she's got the biggest pair of tits I've ever seen on an Oriental chick. How's that, ladies and gentlemen? All right. This is the guy who's Mr. Moral. Television, Harlan Kleiman deserves the credit. HBO was brand new, a couple of years old. He said, why not take a guy like Klein, and instead of showing him for 6 minutes on The Tonight Show where he has to watch his language, he has to watch the time. The audience just came in from Kansas City. They've been in the sun in Burbank for 3 hours. They may not be hip, all this kind of stuff. Let him do a show for an hour. Let him say what he wants. We'll do it at a college, and they did at Haverford College. It was the 20th anniversary now. A lot has gone under the bridge since. I'm working on a 6th one-man show, and it was big. John O'Connor's review was interesting and was kind of prophetic, saying this is going to be big, people paying for television. Now, more conventional television comedy has been able to get more vulgar, more suggestive, probably more adult. But there's an Achilles heel in it, and that's that laugh machine. It's the need in a sitcom to get a laugh every few lines, so that no human being could invent lines which people would laugh at that without trying it out in New Haven for 3 months. Right?
Right.
So they have a machine that can bop it in. You'd never know the difference. They could have done it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Therefore, there's a kind of, again, this is personal completely. Since The Honeymooners and Bilko, and a good many years of All in the Family, which was truly funny, There's not many I was into much. I respect Mary a lot. I watch a little Seinfeld now. I'll probably catch them all in the rerun. I know everyone talks about how good they are, and I've seen them and they're quite funny. But it's not. I'd rather rush home for something else or tape it. I don't know, Jeeves and Wooster, or which isn't that cultured. It's pretty stupid in a way, and it's a sitcom of its own. I don't know, the police and some funny stuff. Some people are individual funny. I've seen some funny Seinfelds and Cheers. Not my kind of television. I like a ball game. I like a movie, American movie classics. And I'm W.C. Fields fanatic. The Marx Brothers, Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy, all my adult life. I'll add in Abbott and Costello for certain things that they did. He was a talented man. Do I have an Abbott and Costello and Three Stooges limit? Yes. But these people were talented and they worked hard, many of them.
Do you think, given the current political climate, that this will somehow be reflected in comedy or not? Or do these guys have a sense of humor?
I don't want to panic. I know. Are you at liberty to say what you're going to do tomorrow? Give out some awards? Okay. We're all concerned. I heard from Kitty Carlisle the other day. She asked me to go see Sheldon Silver, the minority speaker, isn't he? Minority, is he called minority speaker? I better learn that before I go in begging. Anyway, she said, my charm completely passed him by. She is the smoothest one. I love her. Remember her in Night at the Opera? Alone with Alan Jones, with Harpo throwing pasta at people. Anyway, climate. People will always laugh. Realistically, this environment, the arts will suffer to a small measure because of a kind of vendetta. Why should I have to justify Serrano's sculpture, or whatever the hell it was, of a crucifix in urine? And Jesse Helms is sitting there, and I paid $3 billion in tobacco subsidies. I don't understand the logic of it. The poor Jane Alexander, who has to, by the way, you know what I gave her as a present when she left our show and became a politician? Making love to me 8 times a week was too much for her. She went into government. And joke didn't work with you or me, actually. And, I mean, you know how many ballet companies, how many opera companies in small towns, and then boutiques open next door, and in Olean, New York, or you have a couple of restaurants, and people will go to see some opera, and young people are in it, or whatever, all these wonderful things, and they talk about a couple of works that they don't know. Art is supposed to provoke anyway. I can't even take really a stand, but it's minor, and he's talking about all these tobacco subsidies, How about the guy who goes on Larry King representing the Tobacco Institute? That's a tough job. Well, there's no proof, Larry, a nose zooming out like Pinocchio.
Robert, I've often thought that in some ways comedy comes from sadness, or maybe I'm talking about my own plays a little bit. And I wondered if you've ever felt that as well, or it's complicated.
I wouldn't say it absolutely is necessary, but it shows up an awful lot in the profiles of comedians. A little touch of depression. I've been a moody fellow in my life. I mean, I think I'm a good guy, but my father was a brooder, yes, but my father was a brooder. It may have been chemical, I don't know. But very often, again, it's that sand and the oyster theory. Tennessee Williams, in a preamble to The Glass Menagerie, when I think they republished it or something, it originally came out in 46, around there, a few years later, he said he doesn't think he could have created if he weren't neurotic. It's sort of sad, but that he felt was the energy, the whatever, the friction, I do think that there is often a connection. Wasn't there something in the New York Times not long ago linking possible depression with genius and creativity and gift? I don't know, but it seems to show up. Whether or not you could ever say it's definitely there. Now, do you mean in your characters in your work, or you as a creator, maybe certain stuff coming out of melancholia?
I think certainly there is a melancholia in that it depends what gradation of it you allow to come through. Although, like when we did the Sisters Rosensweig, I always
what
thought...
a play. Too bad I never saw it with me in it. Every time I ran out to the theater, I wasn't there anymore. You know, I just... Physics. Remember physics? George Beck?
When I finished that play, I thought it was my most serious play, actually. And I'll never forget the first preview of that play, because I was sitting there with Andre Bishop. You and Madeline come out. People are falling in the aisles laughing, and I'm thinking, I thought I wrote, Chekhovian play, and here they are. And it was an interesting thing. I think it's all sort of gradations.
Well, you knew a few of those things
Well, I knew there were
funny,
some.
my dove.
But
You achieved, first of all, I say that I got a fantastic letter, the most ebullient correspondence I've ever received from Neil Simon. Not known for ebullience, known for brilliance, and pretty good guy. He couldn't get over Wendy's play, and also funny. He and Manny Isenberg, and
he's working with Dan Sullivan now. He's working with the
in
same
the Seattle
director.
repertory. Yes, certain things wind up being funny because there is the addition, you see, of we actors.
Yes.
Set designers don't like actors. They get, what the hell is that guy doing in front of my gorgeous couch? They get very parochial. But the playwright, speaks. It's a little more annoying to read. You want to hear the actors, you know, right? Novelist sits alone. Nobody has to spoil it, right?
No, it only comes alive when the actor...
Well, when the thing works well, as it did in Sisters Rosensweig, first of all, there was a director who had a tremendous method to his madness, understands Wendy's work, her choice, tremendous respect for your opinion, although he ran the rehearsals, didn't pull in any reins for a couple of weeks. Let these people see what they bring to it. If you hire a Madeline Kahn, you don't tell her what to do right away. You let her go. And it was wonderful because we all understood the piece, I think. I mean, I never had any problem with it. I read it, the second I read it, I said, it's going to be a giant hit.
It's true.
I just knew it. I never had a doubt in my mind.
I did. You did.
It has everything. People loved that play. It made people truly happy on a very high level.
Robert, where do you go for inspiration? What do you do if you're feeling, I don't know why I'm on this sad track, but where do you, trying to revive or?
Prozac.
And other than
sorry.
Prozac. No, when you're thinking you have to, come up with new work or.
Well, Bach.
Really? That's interesting.
Handel. Beethoven. Henry Purcell lately a little bit. I have always loved that music, and I was married to a very fine singer, Brenda Boozer. We had a nasty divorce, and I didn't want to listen to Bach anymore. I wasted 5 years not listening to Bach out of 53, not bad. I began at 2. Music is a wonderful way, that kind of music. I have these laser discs of Glenn Gould. Watching this sucker play. Was he ever in this room? I bet he was.
Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah? I bet he was.
Yeah.
With his buttocks coming through the seatless seat that he used. I mean, this guy he was a ball of interesting idiosyncrasies, but could he play Bach? And he was great. I love watching, reading. I came here to see Edgar Doctorow read from the Waterworks. And, Edgar's far from a tap dancer or Jimmy Durante. He commands you to listen carefully with that quiet respect, and it was thrilling and exciting reading. I think my son, when things are, he's a remarkable, he's a wonderful 11-year-old boy, and he lives with his mother and me. We live a couple of miles apart. And she's been touring a lot lately, and I'm very, very close with him. He's playing Pooh Bah in the Mikado, and I played Pooh Bah in camp in 1957. I think he's inspirational. There is a wonderful thing about children who are having a pretty good time of it. He has problems like everyone else. There's a wonderful crystalline purity. He reminds me more of the great parts of my childhood and not the terrors. Like living next to Woodlawn Cemetery. Hey, mister, could you get our ball? Hey, you kids, are you playing? Hey, with big hero sandwiches. They were filling in that part around 1949, 50, 51. Ooh. Death, a lot of thoughts about death. Lived next to a cemetery. I think I would have had them if I lived next to a toy store, but you know. In fact, I'm certain of it. But a mortuary ambulance carried off a suicide down the block, and every head in Decatur Avenue is sticking out watching. And it started me on a kind of death trip. And I remember, you know, I didn't like the idea of being muffled up and having dirt on my face. And, you know, and then I thought, well, I'll probably see George Washington and my grandfather and Babe Ruth. Then I thought, I'm not so sure. I'll be in a hole with dirt all over me. And Jews bury quickly, you know. I mean, if a Jew dies at noon, call the relatives in Phoenix. Their funeral's at 2, you know. I mean, it's a very quick burial. You know, old Jewish people around their relatives are afraid to take a nap, lest they be mistaken for dead. I mean, you just can't take the chance. Pop, let's go. Pop, he's dead. I'm up, for crying out loud. I'm up. I don't know what it is culturally about Jews. I think it's good, though. Let's get on with our lives. Let's mourn you. Let's remember you. You're not as interesting as you used to be. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll take questions from the audience.
Great.
I think, Robert, what do
We'll
you
play Stump the Band. Wow.
We'll play Stump. I don't know. This is an amorphous question, but well, two-part. One, I'm just personally curious who you admire working in comedy today, and also, when you look at your work or whatever, what do you want most from it?
Well, I think, you know, since some of the comedians who have come along after me already treat me like someone in the Museum of Natural History, albeit flattering, you know, I was influenced by Klein, you know, yes. I created a lot of things in comedy. You know, at the end of the act, they go, you guys have been great. I wrote that. And many of them have used that ending, finding it to be effective, and, you know. So where you from, Cleveland? I invented that. It was in North Carolina at the time, which got a bigger laugh. I feel, and some of the best may yet be yet to come. I got a little burned out on the comedy trail. Your play was a very welcome change of direction and respite. I never stopped doing dates. If you recall, I actually had to take a private plane, to make a rehearsal from Atlantic City. I was doing a gig and rehearsing once. But it was lovely to go back to my theater roots. And the film work on Sisters, it's not a major piece, maybe, but working with Swoosie Kurtz, Seal Award, who was not only beautiful, but a very fine actress. Well done. Getting back to that has been great. You asked me about my work, what I remember. I think that in addition to being funny, which anybody who calls himself a comedian should be, I hope that I have laid it on with some intelligence, some taste, some good spirit. I like to be mean when it's good to be mean. I mean, I hated Jim Baker, that fraud who took people for millions because of their religious zeal. And I could be cruel with respect to him and his foible, Jimmy Swaggart or others. But humor has also gotten very mean-spirited at times. And the word PC is loaded. That means it sounds like the Chinese or other totalitarians who use such expressions. He's not politically correct. He's not correct thinking. The whole thing is loaded. It's not loaded to try to be courteous and kind to others whose feelings may be at stake here. And common courtesy has been lost. And now they're making fun of respecting other cultures and all that. Yes, things could go too far another way, too. Council person, council woman, but, you know, why not? It seems the feminists and the women's movement did such a good job that people take it for granted young women and others what's been gained. You know, sometimes, anyway, I could go on forever about that. Some of the MTV movie videos, I'm far from a prude, but there's all this this kind of misogyny all over again. What has happened? I don't quite understand. Mm-hmm. It's too politically correct to be respectful to a woman or a man, for that matter.
But do you feel that in your comedy now, that there are some areas you can't go into because you have to be politically correct about that? I mean, I certainly do in playwriting, that there's a point I try not to do it.
We had a big philosophical point there about one of the lines, if you recall, which you have the freedom to write without people complaining. Well, first of all, a comedian would have a special task. Since your job is to make the people laugh, you can't freeze the environment. You know, I did a concert, which turned out to be a wonderful one, outside of Chicago, not even a month and a half, for a religious Jewish school, a fundraiser. And they called up, Mr. Klein, let me put it on the line with you, the rabbi. You can't say ass, you can't say buns, you can't say tits, you can't say ring, you can't say, hold on, wait a minute, you know. He saw some tape of a show I did on Broadway or whatever. Now, the point is I decided to accept it. He said, we laughed. And I said, don't you think they might laugh? Was I being blue? I'm not going to question he must please his constituency. They had Maury Amsterdam 3 years ago, and it was a fiasco. I don't know. He stooped his cello. He did terrible things, you know. He did off-color jokes and whatever. So who hires Maury Amsterdam to come? I mean, anyway, I took it. They loved it. I did an intelligent, terrific show. Once I said I was going to do it, I knew I could do it on terms that they could live with. There's no point in offending your audience. On the other hand, when I have performed in person, I've pushed it to the limits. It angers me that people are picketing about abortion, which is never an easy choice, and they're talking about the unborn. How about the born? For crying out loud, there has to be some sort of societal triage here, where the born, you got these fetuses that are 5 and 6 and 7 years old that have no future. Let them go picketing there for schools and clothes and books. It's unbelievable. Life is a miracle, no question about it. Procreation, easiest thing in the world. People are shaking hands. In Panama now, 5 children. Only people that can't get pregnant, yuppies in New York. They have to take 6 months off. They have to stop work. Everyone else gets pregnant by, they sneeze on one another. Procreation is something anyone could do. We could sire the world. I mean, you could do that in front of an audience, and most of the audiences that come to see me are, even if they don't agree with my point of view, are respectful about it. Also, I'm being funny about it. I'm trying to. The forums are wrong at the moment. This comedy club circuit and all that is a poor forum. The finest audience I ever had in terms of pure theatricality and intelligence was my limited run 3 weeks at the Circle in the Square, which probably could have run a year. We were doing great, but we all had commitments. They had commitments, I had commitments. The audiences were people, many of whom were unfamiliar with my work. They subscribe, they see a lot of Shaw, and they saw me, and they're bright, and I work right up to them. I never am ashamed of any show I do, whether I have to leave out certain polysyllabic words to be understood, however it's presented. I can still be proud of it, but I love to work up. Mm-hmm. Stand-up comedy hasn't even yet seen them. You asked about some of the people. There's a young man named Bill Maher who has a show called Politically Incorrect, which I don't get either. I think he's saying some funny things. The show is worth seeing, the guests. And what's his name? Miller. Dennis Miller is very clever. Probably a little too profane, but he's clever. He's very funny, and he's intelligent. It's hard to say. There's a lot of comedy talent, but in pure stand-up, people who have some sort of message, I guess you can't leave out Robin Williams, who is a major talent, fine man, an old friend, very influenced by Jonathan Winters. He admits it. Jonathan loves it. I mean, but he's a major improvisational talent, and he also comes out with his stuff. I wish that I sort of like laying off the profanity. I like using it when it's effective. It becomes sort of appalling in a way. If words do have value, then their profane value can be grating and wrong. Don't you agree? Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to open this up to the audience and get the questions up here. Somehow there's cards somewhere.
Did I let you talk enough?
Did you let me?
I don't
yes,
think I
you
let
did.
you talk for a
Actually, no,
second.
we're going to wait for the cards, but I will tell you my favorite Robert Klein story, actually, which is that...
Thank you, Fenneman. I don't know. I'm a Groucho. I'm sorry.
No, this happened on a night at Lincoln Center. There was a big Lincoln Center gala 2 years ago. And the cast of the Sisters Rosensweig was in the Sisters Rosensweig. They had this big gala. Do you remember this? Under a tent, and all of these, Oscar de la Renta people were there. And it was some evening, and Bill Finn wrote a song about me, and I was standing there like this. And then the cast came as the entire party was breaking up. Do you remember this?
We had to do our show downtown first,
Right.
then we went up to Lincoln Center.
And everybody left. So in the room, this is a giant tent with tables for 1,000 people, I think, were just the waiters, the cast of the Sisters Rosensweig. Robert Klein got up on the stage and started singing My Funny Valentine for the waiters and the 8 cast
I
members.
sang it for you.
You did? And then you did a stand-up for like 30 minutes or something, and it was one of the most wonderful evenings I've ever had.
I was a
because-
former busboy. I was commiserating.
No, because...
I was stealing butter at the same time, too, out of sheer habit.
No, there was somebody there who had the pure joy, the truest joy, I think, of performing in a way, and the generosity of performance and the genius of comedy. And I'll never forget that evening, and I've
I love
always
you.
felt
Thank you
grateful
very
to
much.
you for it. So here we go. Oh, great. Compare and contrast.
What kind of underwear do I wear? Okay, I don't think that's appropriate for a comedian in Hawaii. Only for a president at a press conference.
Compare and contrast the Sisters Rosensweig and the Sisters Reed.
I have taken upon myself to only take work about sisters. I did Sisters Rosensweig for a year. I'm now in Sisters. I vacationed last summer in Sisters, Oregon. That's the truth. I sent you a postcard from there. I'm doing the Three Sisters shortly on 42nd Street. We're trying to get Andre and round him up. And I'm doing Las Hermanas Silva in Mexico City, which many of you know from watching Sesame Street means the Silver Sisters. Let me tell you something. Somebody in that organization saw Sisters Rosensweig. My character in Sisters, I won't go into it. Most of you are probably at Roseland on Saturday night at 10 o'clock. In fact, you called it Big Al Parker. See, she's busy writing plays at 10. It's Barker. He's sort of like a Merv Kant. He's a mensch. He knows where he is. He's honest from the start. Swoozie is a doll. She's a New York theater person. She's one of Wendy's favorite actresses. Was in your first play, Uncommon Women.
Right.
And, it's a pleasure. And there's no comparison. One is a team of writers having to get out 24 scripts in 8 or 9 months. And the
But
other,
they're playwrights.
yes,
Okay,
they
they will-
are. One is more ephemeral. Your plays are already in hardcover, honey.
Well,
You know, they're in hardcover. Your plays will live, and that stuff will be fondly remembered. But it's all that gorgeous 35 millimeter film goes down into some abyss. I mean, you know how much film has been exposed.
I was with Swoozie. Kurt Swoozie's an old and great friend of mine, and we went to see Guys and Dolls together. And Swoozie, of course, had worked with Jerry Zaks in John Guare's play at Lincoln Center. So there I am with Swoozie, who's one of the great American stage actresses, a great comedian. And we walk into Guys and Dolls together, and it was the first time I was with Swoozie in a theater where she was mobbed by people saying, "We love you in Sisters!" And it was amazing. You thought, thank God this woman is getting her recognition, but it was odd to be in a theater with her.
I will say, as a soap opera, which it really is, an evening soap opera, beautifully shot. I mean, for $1.2 million, they make a 45-minute feature every week. The expensive filmmakers could take a lesson from them. There's no need that films have to cost what they do. This is, of course, a television schedule, but it has rather interesting and erudite fans, like Maureen Dowd, for example, the wonderful writer for the Times, never misses it, and if she does, her sister will tape it. You know, that kind of, those kind of fans. It's like, I see Einstein. I did an article for the Times when Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca played Michael's Pub, and I started with the fact that Einstein was a big fan of Sid Caesar's. Man, that's saying something.
It is. Okay, would you please share some of your funny experiences at DeWitt Clinton? I taught there for 12 years after you graduated.
George, is that you? Is that your card? You're the librarian there now, right? George Beck, who I went to school with. I haven't seen you since then, and you look, I recognize you immediately, George. Really, I don't know, you must have made a deal with Mephistopheles on the Twilight Zone. Right now, there's an 18-year-old kid walking around with his face hanging down to the sidewalk. Well, it was an all-boys school when I went there. 4,000 boys, one session, in one building at the same time. 4,000 boys. And I don't know, they were kind of old-fashioned in a way. They believed in the good old days. 1 million BC, these boys. You know? Hey, lady! You know. There was Doc Storch, the chemistry teacher, who we used to throw coins at, right, George? Till some mother found out years afterwards. This man was on the payroll. All right, boys, I'm building for that dream house. This was a professor of chemistry, and then you'd throw quarters at his head, and he'd put him in a cigar box. Eddie, Eddie Lewis, a famous black entrepreneur, was one of our classmates. Eddie is Essence magazine. You know. The graduates are many. I know, I had a wonderful time there. It didn't do me a bit of good. First of all, no girls for 4 years at a crucial time was an awful thing. Then I had made the SPs, so I went to Alfred University. I was 16. The freshman women, I mean, I couldn't take any leg without hair on it was already, I mean, I hadn't been in school. Now, you went to an all
I went to girls' school.
And it's still a girls' school.
It's still a
Mount
girls'
Holyoke. I did summer stock there. Ooh, that was very erotic to me, sleeping in that dorm in the summer.
Really?
I left the toilet seat up for the fall class. I did Romeo and Juliet. We did, at Holyoke. We did a few things. Anyway, Clinton I have fond memories of. It's co-ed now. I filmed a music video up there when they were changing it and they were removing urinals. What could be more symbolic? They were balancing it out.
Since they're playing our song, have you worked with Lucy Arnaz? If so, any memorable stories?
You know, Lucy grew up a lot now. I really admire her very much. She was a brat a bit when we worked together on Broadway. I had been on Broadway 4 times. She hadn't been, and I don't know. She used to give me notes and annoy me. And we also had a great show, and I wanted to be on good terms and all that. We worked together at Wolf Trap, singing selections, and in Atlantic City. And once in a while, we get together and do those songs. I see her once in a while. She's a very excellent chanteuse. She has 3 children, plus 2 from Larry's previous marriage. She takes care of business. She had to handle all these things. Her estate, her parents were fabulously wealthy. I had met Big Red a few times, too, a childhood idol, you know. I bet you never had Chinese food with MSG in it, she said, when the Mr. and Mrs. Fung served the meal in Beverly Hills. Look, it's the only way to go, you know. It's the only way to go, to do something on Broadway and have a hit, you know.
That's great.
I mean, imagine the heartbreak of putting in all that work and it closes immediately. It amazes me that people will even invest in that, where a modest film is almost sure to get your money back. You can sell it to airplanes, to Japan, to Korea, to cable, to this, to that. There was 1 million stations. If you don't spend a real fortune on it. I flew in a helicopter in Hawaii last week over the set of Waterworld. 162 million it cost and counting. You know, that's not the way to do things. You know, look at, I'm talking, that's not the way to do things.
Whatever happened to your talk show? What do you think of Chuck Grodin's show?
I haven't seen Chuck's show. He called me about producer. I wonder if he used the producer I recommended. I had a show on USA Network for 2 years on Sunday nights. We got half a clap there. You can see why it was canceled. I have no bitterness. USA Network was great. They put us on for 2 years. We were replaced by the Real Estate Seminar, the Dave Del Dotto 2 in the morning cash flow method, in which for a mere $650, Dave will teach you how the cash can flow right from your bank account right to Dave's in a hurry. I never saw anything like this with mirrors, you know. Now you have no cash, you purchase an apartment building. Now, with the equity you don't have in the apartment building you don't own, you purchase a hotel. Now, you know. Question? You know. You foreclose on people from Grapes of Wrath. You get their house for $1. I mean, the whole thing is repulsive, you know. There's people from Pittsburgh sitting in Hawaii, and, also QVC. Let me ask you something. Why would anyone buy, first of all, I don't know anything about jewelry. What is diamondique? That's what I want to know. I know what a diamond is. What's diamondique? There's beautiful 15 carats, diamondique ring, surrounded with 4 gorgeous 3-carat ruby rosas. They're beautiful ruby rosas. 10 1-carat sapphirettos. They're gorgeous sapphirettos. They're glowing. They're beautiful. With a large off-center 3-carat emeraldo, which is proved by the American Emeraldo Society for its clarity and purity. Also, the American Schmucko Believe Anything Society. Let me ask you, in 10-carat Goldarino, when they ask you to pay, do you pay in money-olio? Hello, my daughter-in-law just purchased the China facsimile of Schenectady, New York. It's just gorgeous. It's beautiful. Well, she does collect China facsimiles of northeastern cities. She had Troy, New York. She had Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And she needed Schenectady. You say she had Schenectady? No, she had Schenectady? No, she needed, and the sound thing is wrong.
Dear Robert, do you have any plans to do another play? If so, when and where? And also, yesterday I was in Seattle and someone came up to me and offered you a part in the musical Big. They said I should ask you, so there.
You know that I played in a movie written for ABC After School Special by Mary Rogers, who I think is a friend of yours, isn't she?
Uh-huh.
That's Richard Rogers' daughter, who's a fine screenwriter in her own right. It was called Summer Switch, in which a boy and his father switch places. It's like the shoe is on the other foot. Well, Tom Hanks told me on a plane ride that Penny Marshall, before she directed Big, had said, "Let's watch this thing with Robert Klein." So I mean, the idea. I will do a play when you finish it.
Okay.
Well, actually, I would even do Uncommon Women and Others. Yeah, I saw my own menstrual blood. I love that.
That would be good.
So
Robert.
cute. I wish I could have seen the original with Swoosey.
It was great.
You had some. Who else did you have in that film?
Glenn Close. On stage was Glenn Close, Jill Eikenberry, Swoosey Kurtz. It was amazing. And then for television, Meryl Streep took Glenn's part. That was great. All right. I thought you were very funny in The Owl and the Pussycat. What was it like to work with Barbra Streisand in that film?
James Spader, who's a decent biographer. No one bought the James Spader story, unfortunately, was it? He wrote a very good book on Bette Davis. He called me. I had a 2-hour conversation with him because I worked with her a few times. My experiences with her were incredible, first rate. All I'd heard, all that stuff. She couldn't be more human, more professional. We worked. I forgot which came first, either The Owl and the Pussycat, which was the happiest thing. There's a bit of trivia there. I was in bed with a woman who, I was a high school student then, who had no lines, but who became a famous pornography actress.
Oh.
Marilyn Chambers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, her name was Marilyn something else, and her daddy was an accountant executive in Cherry Hill, Connecticut, or something like that.
And was she an extra in this?
Well, it was a non-speaking role. Barbara and George Siegel come to my apartment, and there's a very funny scene that takes place there. Anyway, it was a happy set. We took our time. Herb Ross directed it. It was great. And we worked in Vegas together. It was the last time either of us worked in Vegas until she worked there this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the room when they begged her to stay another week, but it was lonely. 3 weeks. She couldn't walk anywhere. We went out for a hamburger a couple of times, and a woman came up and said, "Oh, Miss Dries, I'm sorry, I'm eating now. I just wanted to say, I saw the show tonight. You were so great. Which one did you see, the first or the second?" She told me she didn't like singing that much then. She wanted to concentrate on movies. I'm talking about 1971. Stony End, which was kind of rock and roll, particularly thought she superimposed on her, although she didn't blame anyone. Look, all I can say is this woman, the big achievement was, when I started in the business, she was already making a reputation down in the Village, and she was doing Funny Girl. She got it. There were cheap agents in this city that would actually brag of having come this close to her. She was a Mieskite. She wasn't pretty enough. I said, God, no, honey, She made her own standard. She made her own standard. She affected the world around her in a gigantic way. And this recent speech Frank wrote about the other day too, right? At Harvard, I think she has everything to be proud of. She has every right to make her feelings known. I saw her just 2 or 3 years ago at her apartment. She looks fabulous. She's incredibly proud that she didn't even have any surgery of any kind. She's my age, I think. I'm 53, right? She's 52. I mean, I don't really know her well. I'm not, I don't buy every one of her records. I mean, she's one of a kind, and earned a tremendous amount of respect because she created her own. Maybe one time she was bitchy when she was young, or this and that. Always found her to be completely professional and thorough.
And that's it. Are there any other questions from the House? Or there's, yeah.
Is that in the form of a question? Wait a minute.
Well, afterwards, can we just take more questions, please? Yes.
Yeah, there were a few Bobs and Bobbies. Jane Alexander always called me Bobby. A few people Bobby who are able to do it without being killed. No, I don't have any strong feelings about it. I've always been a Robert. I was Robbie to my... It's not formal, it just is. Robert Martin Klein. And I do remember the decision with my manager then, Jack Rollins. I was damned if I was going to change my name. No one used an ethnic name like Klein when I started out. Not many, anyway. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I tell you the truth. I don't mind the ethnicity. I should have chosen Whoopi Goldberg. You can remember it better. Robert Klein. Look at the phone directories. I've been to Robert Klein. Hey, Richard, how are you? Hey, Kevin. I'm tired of it. Exchanging, mail with Kevin Klein. If I didn't know his wife since she was a child, I'd like to exchange wives with him. I'm not familiar with her work.
He was asking what women comedians Robert admires.
Shh, what? Oh, my God, of course. Well, first of all, I talked about this a lot, not tonight, but there was a time when it was unfeminine to be funny. There was a definite societal barrier to more women doing this. I mean, Fanny Brice, who I enjoyed as Baby Snooks. I'd say Lucille Ball was a genius. I would say she was a genius. Carol Burnett, tremendous talent. The stand-up comedians, when women finally became stand-ups, all went into a self-deprecation bit, like Toady Fields. and Joan Rivers, the last unmarried girl in Larchmont, sort of thing. From little I've seen of Rita, I just was in Hawaii with her, an HBO thing, when she got up and did 10 minutes. I haven't seen much of her, and she and her husband are writing screenplays. She has a lot of dignity. I think Elaine Boozler has a lot of dignity and strength. The women from England, the one that's married to Lenny Henry, Dawn French. I mean, there's a lot of funny people, but there haven't been as many, you know. Did I leave anyone out? Huh? Oh, Madeline Kahn, of course. I mean, yeah, and I love those women from SCTV, and Madeline can still make me laugh, yeah.
Great.
Oh, you know who would make me laugh a lot in rehearsal she did was poor Gilda Radner, was one of the great comedians.
Great.
And my mates, Second City, Judy Grobart always made me laugh. There have been many, but there was a thing holding it up from being too funny, as being unfeminine,
Mm-hmm. One more question. Oh.
Woody Allen. What are my thoughts about Woody Allen? Woody Allen is one of the greats. He's a very unusual talent. I love his work. I think his personal scandal has an effect on all his fans. It's very difficult to completely separate the two because he is so great. I don't think Woody ever personally understood how much he's loved and admired, or has been, in his work. And maybe he was surprised at the reaction to his personal thing. Anyway, there's not much I can say except that this guy is turning around and writing mostly very high-quality pieces one after another, and he sure makes me laugh.
Should we take one more from this lady here and then?
Thank you. She saw me in both plays and thought I was wonderful. I didn't want them to miss that.
No.
They're playing a song, and Sisters Rosensweig said I was wonderful. Wonderful, she said. I wanted them to get. Did you get it in the back? She said I was wonderful. No. My father's mother kept a kosher home in Yorkville. She died of a cerebral hemorrhage when he was 16. He was very bitter at God, and he decided that kosher and all that is not going to matter. However, there was no question about me having a bar mitzvah. There was no, we occasionally, well, he didn't really go. I went occasionally on Yom Kippur. I did feel that I liked the idea of being a high visibility Jew. I disliked very much the idea of the old assimilation in name and everything else. And also because, unfortunately, certain of the most terrible messages haven't still been received. What I mean is, I'm sort of proud of it. And I always thought that my greatest achievement as a performer in one, meaning as a solo, would be to go to Utah and be Robert Klein, urban Jew, educated, and I think that's true now. I mean, I don't wear a Jewish star on my chest, but I'm happy to be that way. So the cultural part was quite strong. I was brought up with my parents having been brought up in a world they considered anti-Semitic and foreign, going up to Niagara Falls in 1937 with my grandpa and having pepper put on their sandwich. I never saw that till I went to Alfred. First year. Little subtle anti-Semitic things like, "Hey, Jew boy!" Just nothing you could put your finger on. Guy next door to me hanging a swastika mobile in his room. And the dean saying, "Well, of course, Robert, we've got a free thought, on the campus." Anyway, we've never, been as welcome. Never have done such a good job in holding up our share and all that. but I would never let my guard down, and I like to remind people. I had just one quick thing. When 1979 or so, when NBC did Holocaust, Elie Wiesel, one of the people I admire most in the world, wrote a letter to the Times saying, how can you trivialize this? You know? And he granted that the performances were good and they meant to write a good screenplay and all this. At this time, I was doing a nationwide radio show, and a woman on my staff went to Catholic high school. She's very intelligent. She's 24 years old, didn't go to college, but she's from New Jersey. She saw Holocaust, and she couldn't sleep, and I said, she'd never heard of it. This is a girl from New Jersey in 1979, 24 years old. A Catholic girl, a wonderful, kind heart, no prejudice. You know. So maybe Elie was wrong in this respect, because since it was a respectable effort to keep the message going, remind people.
You know, I was walking down Broadway with Meryl Streep at that time, and she was in that, and a car came past us. A guy rolled down his window and screamed out to her, "Hey, Holocaust, how you doing?"
Well, you know, it can be trivialized. I don't like the word Holocaust being used every 2 seconds either. But there are a lot of travesties in the world. Anyway, you know, I'm optimistic about that generally. I once asked my shrink years ago, before I was cured. I don't go anymore. I said, Erica, let me ask you this. Erica Freeman, some of you might know, she's a wonderful woman. A Zionist, you know Erica. She asked me to come when she was honored at the UN, so she brought her friend, His Royal Highness, what was it, Habsburg. He's fourth in line. He's a nice kid. He was going to Rensselaer, you know. I said, it's such a pleasure to be speaking before His Royal Highness, Hungary, a country from which my grandparents fled in terror in 1892. I said, why is it so important? A Jew, not a Jew, these responsibilities. Not to deny that I'm a Jew. She said, because you are. I've never been able to figure out that answer. I only heard, in my whole life, I only heard William Kunstler say, no, I'm not really a Jew. Except some of the Marxists I used to know. Some of the friends used to hand out leaflets at the Chevy plant in Tarrytown at 5 in the morning, you know, with Vanessa Redgrave.
Robert,
that it?
Thank you for a wonderful
Thank
evening.
you very much.
Thanks for listening. For more information on the 92nd Street Y, New York, and all of our programs, please visit us at 92ny.org.